This is Charlene Shanklin. You are listening to the Prophet Report podcast from WHS 11 Media. Now, here's Doug Prophet.
He got the shot, and it's the shot heard around the world. The trailblazing Pfizer vaccine that is said to be more than 90% effective in protecting you from coronavirus. In a way, you could liken this Louisville man to the astronauts heading to the moon in 1969. But in this one giant leap for mankind, we're talking about all of us and the virus. So were there any side effects when he got that shot? And how's he doing now? U of L's Dr. Jon Klein in this edition of the Prophet Report podcast. So, John, you're going to get the shot, and it's two shots, one shot, and then 3 weeks later you get another. And the thing that I was really fascinated by is half the people got the placebo and half did not. Do you know whether you got the placebo or the real shot? What's your best theory on what you got?
Based on the symptoms that I had after each shot, I'm reasonably certain that I got the actual vaccine. There were about 10 or 12 of us that enrolled in the study down in Bardstown, and just not surprisingly, half of us had no reaction whatsoever, and half of us had really very similar reactions to the first and the second shot.
What were those symptoms that you had after the shot that made you think you got the real thing?
Well, the first injection, I had a very sore arm, and about half of us had sore arms, and actually exactly half of us had sore arms, and the other half did not. And then the second injection, the soreness was a good bit, worse. Still not terrible. I was able to go out and work out the next day, and really didn't limit my physical activity. And then later the evening of the day after the injection, I started to feel joint aches and muscle aches and a little feverish. But when I took my temperature, I didn't have a fever.
So I said on the air, I sort of compared you and your group to the astronauts. I mean, you really are trailblazers, and that you stood up and said, sure, I'll be a part of this trial. And I know that you felt it was important to do because you're a doctor. Tell me how it works then. Okay, so you get the vaccine, which is it just like the flu shot? Did they inject you with the COVID-19 virus?
No.
Or then do you get exposed to it somehow to see whether the vaccine's going to work?
I probably would have run away if it was injecting the virus, either killed or weakened into me. I wouldn't have liked that at all. So I did a fair amount of reading about this particular Pfizer vaccine, and what it is it's just the pieces of the genetic code for the virus that are packaged into a chemical compound that helps them get into cells, and so they stick you in your shoulder muscle, and the genetic material in this packaging goes into your muscle cells, and they begin to make the proteins that the virus does. And as soon as they start to do that, probably about 24 hours later, your immune system says, well, these are foreign proteins. We're going to start making antibodies and gearing up the immune system to get rid of them, because that's what our immune system does. It doesn't like anything foreign.
So how do you know that you can't get COVID-19 now that you're protected by the vaccine? I mean,
I don't know.
So you don't know. So they don't then, this group is not exposed to the virus to see whether the vaccine works.
No, that's called a challenge trial, and there's one starting in England, but here it's not likely to happen. It's very controversial. But, my wife and I both went down to enroll, and we both had similar responses, and she's a physician too, and so we both had the opinion that we probably had gotten the vaccine, but until Pfizer releases the results, starting with yesterday, but until they release the detailed results, we don't know if it provides us with protection. So we haven't changed our behavior in the least, and we won't until we see the fine details of the information, the data that they're going to present to the FDA.
So you're still wearing masks, you're still socially distancing, and you're looking for that fine details from Pfizer. And what will they tell you? What will they release that could give you confidence to live your life like a normal human being and not worry about masks and social distancing? What are you looking for when they release that evidence?
There's a lot of questions that I need answered, and I think we all need answered. The first one is answered yesterday. They say, you know, more than 90% effective at reducing symptoms. But, you know, I have an elderly father, and what I need to know is not only does it reduce symptoms in people who have had the vaccine, but does it reduce the ability to transmit the virus? Because it could tamp down the symptoms, but I could still, in theory, infect someone. So Pfizer will tell us a lot about infections within the group that was immunized, the people around them, things like that. They'll also tell us whether it's just symptoms that are reduced or whether it's viral load. And so they'll explain those things to us.
So the news...
Go ahead.
The news was just amazing. I mean, it was a bombshell report to see more than 90% effective. But how do they know then? Walk me through it. How do they know it's more than 90% effective if you've got a lot of people who are in the same boat as you are?
As I understand it, the trial is designed this way. So the Pfizer people are blinded as well. They don't know who's in the placebo group or the group that's getting the vaccine, at least the external evaluation monitoring, the data monitoring. And so with the help of the statistics people, they say, well, how many total cases do we have to see in the whole group? Okay, so both groups, before we can see if there's really statistically a difference. And at any given point, they already knew from the statistical analysis that initially they should wait until they see 32 infections. Well, they decided with the FDA's guidance that they would wait longer. And so they went to 62. Well, by the time they waited for 62, there was such a surge in the country that they actually had 94 cases. And they didn't know which group had the cases. When they looked at the data over the last week, what they saw was that the infection rate in the vaccine group was reduced by 90% compared to the placebo group. Well, in those 94 cases.
How excited were you when this news came out? Did you find out like the rest of us did?
I woke up and I saw on my phone that Pfizer had issued a news release, and I opened it up and read it, and you know, I was shocked and pleasantly shocked, but I was still shocked because one thing that's important to understand is that the FDA had already told all of the vaccination companies, all the vaccine companies, that they were setting the threshold of a successful vaccine at 50% reduction. So I expected, somebody's going to come up with something that's 60, 65%. But to see 90% in this initial analysis was really a shock. And it may be that it decreases slightly as more and more patients are analyzed, but it's still not going to fall, I would suspect, anywhere below 85, 80% as they finish up the remainder of the study.
You're not the only one here in Kentucky who got this. I mean, you recruited some colleagues, some friends.
I did. And well, actually, I didn't recruit them. The first person was a friend of ours who's a pediatric cardiologist, and she emailed us and called us and said, they're doing this Pfizer vaccine study, and it's in Bardstown. And I had not heard of this clinical trials unit that's down at Bardstown. And so I looked them up, and they're actually very well known and have a great track record. And Pfizer did something that was really important. They published the recipe for the study. They published the protocol. And so I was able to read the protocol, and I was satisfied with that. And my wife read it, and so we drove down to Bardstown. But then we actually did, after we were recruited, we started recruiting other people, some of them physicians, some not. And I think we ended up with a total of, counting up, there were 12 of us in this group.
You never had second thoughts? You never thought, I don't know about this?
A little bit. It's just, it's funny. I'm not a brave guy, but I really, when I started reading that only 50% of the people in the country were willing to get a vaccine, and I know the data that physicians by occupation are some of the most trusted people in the country still. We still have the trust, of the population. I thought, you got to go do this kind of stuff as a physician. And that was the sort of the explanation I gave to, my friends, that I thought that this was one of those times that if people still really trust us, if we want to get out of this thing, that we're in through vaccines, the physicians just have to go down and get the vaccine, and then be able, with real authority to say, look, I did it. I felt lousy for about 6 hours. And now Pfizer says that, it's 90% effective at reducing symptoms. So I think it's worth it. I think if we're able to say that in public, and I think, there are a lot of other people that, that have public trust, a lot of other occupations.
I'm talking to Dr. Jon Klein, who is the Vice Dean for Research at the U of L Medical School. When we come right back from this break, we're going to talk about some of the other folks who were with him in this trial, the vaccine trial for COVID-19, this fascinating research center that is down in Bardstown, Kentucky. They played a big role in this trial, and also where Kentucky is now heading for the winter months for COVID-19. That's right after this. Stay with us. The Prophet Report podcast is all local. Hey, the holidays are coming up, and with the virus still around us, we need to stay home more often, and now's a great time to listen to the podcasts. Did you know that Charles Dickens visited Louisville in the 1800s? He was a major superstar, but what he thought of our city may have you saying, bah humbug. Go to YouTube and search Charles Dickens Louisville, and Prophet Report podcast number 5 will pop right up. Now, back to Jon Klein. Well, Dr. Klein, you've been in touch with some of the other people who I know took this shot. What were their side effects or reactions? I'm sure you all compared notes.
We did, of course, and some of us, kind of hang out together. We're, there's several of us that are road cyclists, and so we see each other when we go out for rides, and we've compared notes. We had very similar reactions, those of us who had any reaction. And so a few people had low-grade fevers. I don't think anybody's temperature got above 99.5, but everyone felt, just sort of a little punk about 24 hours after the second injection of those that had reactions. And every one of us felt really pretty much back to normal the next day. So about 48 or actually 36 hours after the injection.
I have to ask, I guess, off the subject real quick, I guess you're a believer in the flu shot every year.
Yes, I am.
Okay, good. I just wanted to make sure you're getting your flu shot. If you're going to be brave enough to do this one, got to have the flu shot. So here we are in Kentucky now, just increasing every day with record-breaking numbers, the number of deaths increasing, more people in the ICU beds. Here, you took a vaccine that's giving everybody hope, but is a long way off. What would you tell people about the pandemic as we are heading now into the strength of winter time?
I think the good news from yesterday should motivate all of us to want to stay healthy until the vaccine and then also the drugs that were approved yesterday are available. And we only have a few tools to do that. And they're just, there is this very real thing called COVID fatigue. People are tired of not seeing their relatives and they're tired of wearing masks. But the only path to the springtime where we're going to have large amounts of the vaccine for people to receive, it is to just use these, what I call blunt instruments to try and control the community spread. And those are the usuals. That's mask wearing, 6 feet distancing, hand hygiene. And what I'm really emphasizing heading into the next 12 weeks is decrease the activity outside of your home and decrease the total number of encounters that you have with people outside of the ones with whom you live. That's the only way we're going to get through this.
How bad do you think it's going to get?
I think it's going to get very bad across the country. I don't know what it'll be like in Kentucky, but I think it's going to be worse than it was in the spring. I'm hopeful that we've got enough hospital and ICU capacity that we're not going to find ourselves in the same sort of situation as a New York or New Jersey, Connecticut, or even the way that Minnesota and Wisconsin are beginning to look right now. But I think the next 12 weeks are going to be the most difficult of the pandemic. But then on the other side of that, as the vaccine rolls out, I think that we have, a very good chance by midsummer of beginning to see the impact of the vaccine. And then by next fall, I'm hopeful that things will begin to resemble something that's normal.
So you believe the vaccine's available to people in more of a mass way in the summer?
I think so. I looked at the production figures that Pfizer published, and this is all also assuming that Pfizer's the only producer. There's another RNA vaccine, so very, very similar strategy that's made by a company called Moderna, and they should report in the next 2 weeks. And since it's a very similar vaccine, I've got my fingers crossed that it's going to have a similar efficacy, even if it's only 75% or 70% effective. What that'll mean is we'll have a whole nother batch of vaccine that's ready to go, because all these companies have made the vaccine in advance, not knowing if it'll get approved. And so Pfizer has enough already for certainly in December for 15 million people to get vaccinated. I assume Moderna is similar, so we can we get up to about 10% of the country in the first couple months if we can work out the logistic issues. Prior
to getting this shot, have you had the virus? You're a doctor.
No, I haven't, and no, I've actually been very lucky, and I've also been very careful. I'm over 65, and I have some underlying conditions, so I still see patients, but I have been very, very careful and very fortunate, and no, I haven't.
So we explain to people. Okay, let's go into the summertime. Let's fast forward to when the shots are readily available. Would you tell people who might be hesitant and want to sit on the sidelines even further? What would you tell them? Take the shot immediately, or wait it out and let's see how more people, the mass population, react to it?
I think after I see the information, the data from Pfizer and presumably from Moderna, I think I'm going to be able to tell people that the earlier the better, as long as their primary care doctor agrees, and they should always talk to their primary care doctor.
And do you expect most people would have the kind of symptoms you had? Because you hear these reports, awful reports. I heard one the other day on a network radio broadcast that people should expect some of the population, strokes, fatal heart attacks, awful things as a possible side effect from this vaccine.
And I think that's why, that's the safety data that Pfizer has accumulated. And I think I want to see that when they present it to the FDA in the next 10 days. I think that's really important. All I can do is speak for myself. I'm over the age of 65, and I felt that the adverse effects were tolerable. But that doesn't mean that everyone will have the same reaction. I think it's likely if you look at the distribution of vaccine side effects in various trials, the sort of really severe and the rare fatal side effect is very, very rare.
And
so
when did you get the shot, by the way?
Oh, gee, I've lost track actually, but I think it was about 6 weeks ago. It was certainly, yeah.
So 6 weeks ago, and then they come out with their news.
Yeah. No, I mean the timing was not bad,
no.
But we didn't know what we were getting into fully, and there's a certain amount of risk that you assume in a research study. That's why they do a consent process. And so we went through just like everyone else, we went through the consent process.
So you had the slight fever. It went away pretty quickly, I guess. The sore arm went away, sort of like after the flu shot, and then you went back to doing what you do.
I never had a fever. I felt feverish, and I ran and took my temperature, and I never had a fever. I think that so there's some other vaccinations that I compare this to. So if you're over 60 or 65, there's a shingles vaccine called shingles.
So I've had it. I got the one that's over 50. You can get it now over 50, and when they tell you, that pharmacist told me, she said, you will feel like you have the flu for 24 hours, but you won't. You won't have a fever, but you're going to feel chilled, and you won't feel nauseous. She nailed it. Every single thing. I've never had a reaction from a flu shot in my life. I've always gotten them, but that shingles shot exactly mimicked what you're saying, Dr. Klein.
And I'll tell you, the Pfizer experience was not nearly as bad as the shingles vaccine. The shingles vaccine, I basically went home from work, and I never do that.
Yeah, I felt I was constantly feeling my head going, well, I don't have a temperature. Well, as we wrap this up, how fortunate are we in Kentucky to have this little place down in Bardstown? It's been around for 3 decades, but they've been testing various drugs, and that's where this clinical trial was centered for you. It's called the Kentucky Pediatric Adult Research Center. I mean, I'm like you. I never knew this existed.
I didn't. And I'm really glad it does. And I understand their history a little bit. I talked to the doctors while I was down there, and I think that they had experience with childhood vaccines. That was a real plus. And in general, they had a very strong track record of doing clinical studies or clinical trials, as you call them. And so they were a natural partner for Pfizer, and we're very fortunate that they were.
Well, we're very fortunate to have you stepping up to the plate here, Dr. Klein. When this study came out, I was talking to folks in the newsroom. I said, we got to start getting in contact with U of L or UK or one of these places in Louisville. I know somebody in this town has been a part of that. That's just the way our community is. We've been so lucky with the medical community in Louisville that I knew there had to be a connection. And then voila, we got a news release from U of L Medical and talked about you. So have you had a great feedback? Have people reached out to you to say, I'm impressed, thank you for doing this?
It's been nice to hear from people and to realize that, this goal that I have to try and tell people what the experience is like so they can make up their minds for themselves, and hopefully that they'll go ahead and get vaccinated. This is really important. This is how we get out of this situation. And so, the feedback has been tremendous, and people are always asking questions. Well, what was it really like? And the answer is it was not bad, and it was tolerable. So for me, at least, and so I'm looking forward to seeing the rest of the information that Pfizer has, and I'm really looking forward to seeing more and more people getting vaccinated so that we can begin to turn this thing around.
Well, Dr. Klein, thank you very much for your generosity to research and for spending some time with us today. I really appreciate it.
Well, thank you.
Pfizer expects to make up to 50 million doses of the vaccine this year and 1.3 billion of them next year. It's just one of several companies working to bring good vaccines soon. They will be free of charge when you get the shot. You can reach me by emailing DProfit, that's one word, DPROFFIT, at WHAS11.com. The Profit Report is a production of WHAS 11 Media.